The August sun hangs low over Thrace, a molten coin pressed against the wide, dust-paled sky. Squint, and you can almost see the shimmer of spearheads rippling like wheat in a breeze that never comes. Somewhere beyond those distant ridges lies the city of Adrianople, its walls white and confident, its public fountains murmuring promises of imperial permanence. But out here on the baked plain, every certainty Rome has spent centuries forging is about to crack. Not under the weight of some exotic superweapon or rival empire, but beneath the tramp of refugees pushed to desperation. These are the Tervingi and the Gruthungi, Goths with calloused hands and empty stomachs, families who once begged Rome for sanctuary and now march beneath storm cloud banners painted with wolves. At their head rides Fritigern, quick-smiling, quicker thinking, unwilling to witness his people starve politely at the riverbanks of civilization. Opposite him, in resplendent purple, stands Emperor Valens, a man who inherited half the world, yet cannot convince a single scout to bring him trustworthy news. Between them sprawls 80,000 heartbeats, Roman and Gothic, pounding in the same cadence of fear. By sundown, those hearts will seed the soil, and the idea of Rome, impervious, eternal, rooms full of maps stretching from Scotland to the Sudan, will never look quite the same. Listen carefully to the hush before spears are lifted. You may hear the first thin crack in that imperial veneer, a hairline fissure that future centuries will widen into collapse. This is the story of one afternoon that turned the world on its hinge. The battle the ancients called Hadrianopolis, and historians later branded the beginning of the end. Now step backward with me across a decade of encroaching shadows and unheeded warnings. The year is 367, and the Danube frontier appears solid, a living wall of forts, watchtowers, and bureaucracy. To Roman officials, it seems proof that order can be stamped upon geography. Yet, beyond the river's broad, glinting ribbon, the steppes vibrate with hoofbeats Roman cartographers never bothered to mark. Hunnic riders, lean, silent, terrifying in their speed, test the edges of Gothic territory, burning villages that cannot outrun them. Each village lost flings survivors westward, like sparks on a dry wind, and those sparks merge into a blaze of uprooted tribes. The Goths are not a single nation, but a quilt of clans accustomed to drifting, fighting, marrying, merging, and drifting again. Now that quilt is being set aflame. Their chiefs look across the Danube and see Rome, not just legions, but bread, vineyards, timbered roofs, iron plows, cathedrals where a new Christian God promises salvation independent of lineage or language. And so envoys are dispatched bearing gifts and humility, requesting land within the empire. Rome, juggling Persian skirmishes in the east and budget shortfalls everywhere, says yes, on paper. In practice, the machinery of admission jams on bribes, shortages, rivalries between generals, and one lethal miscalculation. The assumption that starved barbarians will remain docile even as profiteers sell them boiled dog at 10 times the price of wheat. Watch the chain reaction spark. The Danube crossing, intended as a humanitarian gesture, becomes a chaotic scramble. Log jams of wagons clog pontoon bridges. Soldiers pocket entrance fees. Families are separated in the press. Once ashore, the Goths wait for promised rations that never arrive. Governors hoard supplies to pad ledgers, while speculators like Lupicinus and Maximus corner grain markets then flog rotten meat at extortionate rates. Hunger breeds fury. Fury breeds violence. Desperate Gothic warriors raid storehouses, Roman garrisons retaliate, massacres flash across village squares, and trust, a currency rarer than gold, evaporates overnight. Fritigern emerges as the one commander able to impose discipline on this swelling, seething mass. He offers a stark bargain. Follow my banner, and we survive together, or scatter and die in someone else's harvest field. Enough choose survival to birth an army. News of Gothic uprisings filters to Emperor Valens as garbled bulletins. Serving in the east, he is anxious for a decisive victory to equal the laurels worn by his elder brother Valentinian versed in the west. Valens imagines a short campaign, a crisp triumph to display in Constantinople's hippodrome. Instead, he gets a 2-year guerrilla nightmare. Gothic bands roam Thrace like smoke, striking supply depots, then vanishing into oak-cloaked hills. Roman columns trudge in ponderous pursuit, weighed down by wagons and a doctrine calibrated for set-piece encounters. Villages that once paid taxes now pay protection money. Imperial couriers ride harder, letters grow more frantic, and still the frontier bleeds. Spring 378 arrives with omens. Western Emperor Gratian dispatches crack auxiliaries, but they march from Gaul at a snail's pace, delayed by Alemanni raids. Valens, restless, decides to finish the war alone. He musters some 35,000 troops, legionaries, auxilia palatinae, archers from Arabia, cataphract cavalry, whose lamellar coats gleam like fish scales. They are proud, but under strength, many veterans having been siphoned east to watch Persia. Scouts report the Goths encamped north of Adrianople behind a wagon lager, a movable fortress of chained carts encircling women, children, and livestock. Fritigern's warriors, perhaps 40,000 strong, field magnificent cavalry, Alan horse archers, and Ostrogoth nobles. But much of that cavalry is off foraging when Valens draws near. His advisors urge caution, wait for Gratian, combine forces, crush the rebels in overwhelming fashion. But fresh rumors claim Gratian has already beaten Alemanni and is racing east, ready to steal the glory. Valens's vanity buckles. On the morning of August 9th, he orders the march. Imagine that march. Heavy infantry and cuirasses trudge 12 miles beneath a pitiless sun, water skins nearly empty. Charging across open plain, they breathe dust churned by their own vanguard. Their flanks, meanwhile, extend thinly to cover an army twice their size. By midday, they sight the Gothic circle of wagons crouched on a low rise. The ring seems dormant, smoke curling from cook fires, children visible between gaps in lumber, the perfect target for a quick assault. Yet somehow, the Romans overlook swirls of distant horsemen on the horizon, Gothic cavalry recalled by emergency signal fires, galloping back. Valens forms 2 battle lines instead of the conventional 3. Reserves are scant. He sends envoys to parley, perhaps hoping Fritigern will surrender under awe of imperial purple. Fritigern understands the value of time. Time for his cavalry to return. Time for Roman troops to broil where they stand. So he invites negotiation, offers hostages, then politely stalls. His archers loose demonstrative arrows that thump into Roman shields, a not-so-subtle hint the talks could sour at any moment. Tension frays discipline at the Roman front. An unnamed tribune on the left flank, perhaps eager to redeem past failures, orders his skirmishers forward without waiting for imperial signal. Javelins arc, clatter against wagon planks, pierce a few hides. Gothic sentries retaliate, and suddenly, the parley disintegrates in a rain of missiles. Roman cohorts surge uphill, helmets ringing, sandals slipping on loose scree. For a heartbeat, it appears they might breach the Lager gate. But within that timber circle, Gothic infantry stands layered. First, a wall of scuta-bearing spearmen. Behind them, a second rank hurling axes. Behind them, archers knocking arrows by the sheaf. Each Roman thrust meets a spray of iron shards. Assault columns lose cohesion. Centurions shout formations back into line. Horns blow contradictory commands. And just then, like thunder rolling over a ridge, 4,500 Gothic horse slam into the Roman left. Picture the momentum. Mail-clad riders leaning beneath banners dyed night black, their composite bows sending shafts ahead of spear points. Dust boiling beneath hooves. Roman light cavalry posted on the flank scatter in first contact, wheeling away to fend for themselves. The Roman infantry wing, suddenly exposed, braces shield to shield, but finds its own cavalry reserve missing. Valens had shifted much of it to the right in hopes of enveloping the Lager. After initial shock, some legionaries managed to pivot, stabbing upward at plunging horses. Yet numbers tell. The Gothic charge shears along the line like a scythe, peeling back cohorts, encircling pockets of resistance. Officers fall, signa vanish under trampling feet, communication arteries snap. Within minutes, a classic pincer begins to close, a nightmare Rome itself once perfected at Cannae. On the center, the Romans still hammer the wagon wall, unaware their left is folding. Sweat blinds them. Leather straps bite, pila quivers stand empty. Suddenly, arrows hiss from behind. Gothic horse archers have swept around to strike from the rear. Confusion spirals. Soldiers pivot to meet the new threat, exposing flanks to defending spearmen. Shields drop. Swords hack blindly. Panic leaps trench-like from man to man. Now, the right wing, which had inched forward with early success, looks back and sees a maelstrom where orderly ranks once glinted. Morale wavers. Some detachments attempt a fighting withdrawal, others bolt outright, dust clouds signaling the route to collapse. Emperor Valens, stationed mid-line with his guard, realizes the encirclement too late. Courtiers plead with him to mount a fresh horse and flee to Adrianople, but imperial dignity shackles him. Reports diverge from here. One version has Valens struck by an arrow to the side, falling unconscious. Bodyguards carry him toward a farmhouse only to be overwhelmed. Another claims he burned alive when Goths torched that building, unaware of their prize inside. Either way, his corpse is never definitively identified, an absence that later chroniclers seize upon as metaphor. The empire itself vanished into its own funeral pyre, unrecognizable in the smoke. By sunset, the field is carnage. 2/3 of Roman infantry lie dead or dying. Estimates run to 20,000. 8 of 12 tribunes perish, along with the Praetorian prefect. Ammianus Marcellinus, veteran historian, will write that graded ranks dissolved, like lead melted by a furnace. Survivors flee in broken clumps, shedding armor to outpace pursuers. Goths, too exhausted for systematic slaughter, strip corpses, smash unlocked chests of gold carried for troop pay, then wheel wagons south to loot the soft underbelly of Thrace. Without field armies to bar them, countless villas, towns, and hamlets open like ripened grain sacks. Strategically, the loss is irrecoverable. Rome has other legions, but training replacements for its professional corps will take a generation, and the psychological wound is deeper still. No emperor has died in battle against barbarians for 2 centuries. Citizens long taught to equate Rome with inevitability feel that certainty shred. Senate debates turn poisonous, blaming everything from Arian theology to climate anomalies. Refugees pack causeways to Constantinople, carrying rumors of Goths sprouting wings and breathing fire. Over the next year, imperial generals resort to diplomacy. They grant Fritigern's people legal settlement inside Roman borders in exchange for peace. It seems a short-term fix, yet it plants the concept that foederati, barbarian federates bound by treaty, are an acceptable substitute for Roman garrisons. By the 5th century, entire regions will be patrolled by such allies, many loyal, some opportunistic. The Western Empire will barter tax revenue for security until revenues evaporate and security swallows the state. But let us not speed through decades too fast. Linger on individual fates forged at Adrianople. Consider Ricomeras, the Frankish comes who survived only by galloping away before the final ring closed. He would later serve Emperor Theodosius, advising caution whenever impetuous officers urged a decisive clash. Remember Ariulf, Gothic elder slain while shielding wagon-bound infants. His death crystallized among Goths the conviction that Rome could never again be trusted to protect the vulnerable. Recall the anonymous Roman medicus who spent 3 nights wandering corpse piles, amputating shattered limbs beneath moonlight, inventing splints from snapped spear handles. He scribbled on wax tablets anatomical notes later recopied by monastic scholars, influencing medieval surgery. Battles birth ripples that lap shores centuries distant. Nor was Adrianople merely a military turning point. It upended theology. Goths had adopted an Arian Christianity that Rome's Nicene majority labeled heresy. When Arian Goths slew Nicene Romans under a blazing sun, preachers on both sides interpreted the outcome as divine commentary, triumph or punishment, depending on the pulpit. Theologians would ruminate whether empires could claim favored nation status with God or whether faith was transforming into a passport independent of elected borders, a question echoing through crusades and reformations yet unborn. Geopolitically, the battle redrew maps without ink. The Danube frontier, long treated as Rome's vertebra, ceased to function. Subsequent emperors fortified inner lines, tacitly conceding outer provinces. Tax rolls shrank, forcing coinage debasement that spurred inflation from Britannia to Egypt. Frontier towns became walled islands ringed by pasture rather than bustling trade depots. Commerce rerouted along safer sea lanes, enriching coastal hubs while strangling inland markets. Thus, a single afternoon's carnage cascaded into economic re-architecture. Tactically, too, Adrianople is instructive. Roman heavy infantry, engine of conquest for 7 centuries, proved vulnerable to mobile cavalry under a commander willing to refuse pitched engagement until conditions favored him. After 378, the empire invested heavily in mounted units, but quality horse breeding required pastures lost during frontier collapse. Mercenary Sarmatian and Alan contingents filled the gap, amplifying the empire's dependency on migrant fighters. Sightlines between cause and effect trace themselves like cracks across a marble bust. Subtle at first, unstoppable once spread begins. Yet it would be simplistic to declare Adrianople the day Rome died. The Eastern Empire rebounded, reorganized, and under Theodosius I later won victories at the Frigidus. Constantinople's walls still stood impregnable, its bureaucracy nimble. What Adrianople did was remove the illusion of unassailable supremacy. From that moment, every tribe on the periphery knew Rome could be beaten, and every provincial governor knew reinforcements might never arrive. Fear seeded local autonomies, some flowering into independent kingdoms when imperial attention waned. Closer to the human heart, the battle unmasked how arrogance corrodes judgment. Valens ignored scouts, spurned allied aid, and gambled for laurels. Fritigern exploited every Roman misstep, yet never lost sight of his original mission, securing land for his people. In the end, one man chased personal glory, the other communal survival. History seldom judges those motives, but in the tally of consequences it remembers which proved sustainable. Travel now with the ghosts of that field. Stand where bones whitened for decades, fertilizing gritty soil until peasants complained of iron sprouting like weeds. Medieval travelers collected spearheads there as talismans. Ottoman sultans visited en route to campaigns, invoking spirits of fallen Goths to bless artillery. Even modern farmers plowing outskirts of Edirne unearthed rusted scales of cataphract armor, children placing them beside smartphones in classroom show and tell. The past is never past. It is soil we tread every day. And what of the Danube migrants who sparked the confrontation? Their descendants served under Emperor Honorius, defended Italy against even newer arrivals, Vandals, Burgundians, Huns, then eventually carved realms of their own. The Visigothic kingdom in Spain traces lineage to refugees once scanned with suspicion at Roman customs posts. Nations are rarely born clean. They emerge from collisions of fear, hope, and mistakes. The lesson radiating from Adrianople is twofold. First, that grand systems fail not through a single cataclysm, but via compounded choices made in corridors where ego meets expedience. Second, that humanity's migratory impulse can overturn fortifications long considered permanent. Walls stop armies. They seldom stop hunger. When diplomacy mismanages desperation, swords answer. 2 millennia later, policymakers still grapple with migrations across seas, deserts, and ideology, often forgetting the cautionary ledger inscribed on that Thracian plain. So imagine the twilight after battle. Smoke columns lean eastward, carrying the scent of pine, horse sweat, and something metallic. Ravens wheel in black geometry above discarded shields. In distant Adrianople, bathhouses that once echoed with gossip now treat arrow-riddled torsos. Couriers gallop for Constantinople, road dust mixing with tears. A dozen scribes cross-check casualty lists, already aware they will never tally every name. And somewhere, beyond reach of official scrolls, a Gothic widow finds her husband's helmet shattered, yet his face serene, and she wonders whether the struggle was worth the price. Every empire ends in such questions. History invites you not only to observe, but to interrogate. If the Romans, masters of logistics, law, and engineering could misjudge a refugee crisis. What blind spots stalk modern powers? If one emperor's pride could erase two-thirds of an army in an afternoon, what safeguards exist against vanity today? And if a people branded barbarian could resurrect themselves as guardians of a successor civilization? How fluid are the labels we cling to in our own headlines? Remember that tension the next time you cross a border, scroll a news feed proclaiming some group alien or dangerous. Recall that beneath every tribal epithet beats a hunger for stability, dignity, land, bread, needs as universal as the pulse shivering through those 80,000 warriors on August 9th, 378. The field of Adrianople is littered not merely with casualties, it is strewn with mirrors. Look into one, and you might glimpse today's world staring back. Lines on maps, caravans of displaced families, decisions forged in boardrooms by men certain they possess all the facts. And so our journey circles back to that suffocating afternoon, heat rippling, dust glowing. The imperial eagle's standard that tumbled in panic still lies somewhere under modern soil, bronze wings dulled but unbroken. Maybe that is the truest emblem of Rome's legacy. Empires fall, yet the ideas they cast, law, citizenship, infrastructure, ambition, remain, awaiting uprights strong enough to raise them anew. Fritigern triumphed, Valens perished, but the concept of statecraft outlived both. In every capital debating how to integrate newcomers, in every military academy studying tactical envelopment, Adrianople whispers its dual doctrine: adapt, or I will adapt you. You have walked the causeways, tasted the grit, watched formations dissolve in arrow-sleeting dusk. If this story stirred dust from forgotten corners of your imagination, if it challenged the narrative that history moves only in straight lines, do not let the insight fade with the echo of my final sentence. Share this voyage. Subscribe so our next expedition finds you before algorithms bury it beneath cat videos and conspiracy reels. Join the comments phalanx and tell us which clash, Kadesh, Kosovo, Kursk, deserves a forensic resurrection next. Because the past is not a museum, it is a war chest of warnings and inspirations, and together we will keep lifting its lid.